You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
So excited to be able to start the week off right with you. It is literally my favorite day of the week. Mondays, I've spoken about that before, because no matter how bad my last week was, I can look at this as a clean start, a fresh start, and really a way for me to just move forward. No matter what happened last week, like I said, no matter what's going on in my life, I say, okay, today's Monday. It's that day on the calendar where I get to start fresh. And I'm excited about that. I really am. And I want you to start to see things the same exact way. And again, no two people will ever view the world through the same lens. And I understand that. Like, my reality is not going to be the same as yours, but there's certain things that we can really gel on, that we can mesh together, that we can see the same exact way. And that's why I believe today's topic is really, really important. There's some people right now in my life, and actually a few health practitioners that I'm working with, that I'm mentoring right now, that of course will remain nameless. But they're going through some hard times. They're going through a lot of changes in their life. And they feel like their life is almost falling apart. That in some ways, it's really not where they ever expected to be. That they wish they could go back in time. That they've said to me that it's really not worth living. And when I hear that, I feel for them. I honestly do. Because although it's been a while now, I know what that's like. I truly do. And that's now, 15 years ago for me, right? It's 15 years ago where I was feeling depressed, where I was feeling like, what's the whole point of all of this? If this is going to be my life, what's the point of living, right? Or why do I have such deep anxiety about what the future holds for me? And I'm going to explain that today. I'm going to do my best for you to understand that life is not always easy. It's not, right? And even when we're coasting, even when we're going through those good times, there's going to be a little bit of struggle ahead. Now, I don't want you to be afraid of that. And I want you to understand this, is that we all have to go through it. It's part of the human experience. No one escapes it. It doesn't. But what I've told you before, and I'm going to say again, is that when you are in the high, when you're feeling good, try to ride that high for as long as you can. And when you get into a low spot, we all do, right? We all do. Things don't go our way at work, or we lose a loved one, or there's a little bit of stress in a relationship, or kids, there's kid-based issues that we'd rather not see. Understand that our job is not to totally avoid the lows, but to pull ourselves out of that low faster. And that's part of what I want to teach today as well. And I also want you to understand that if you're at a low spot, if you're feeling low mood, if you're feeling apathetic, just feel nothing, or you feel depressed, it's a typical indicator that you are right now living in the past. And what I mean by that is this, is that you're not accepting where you are right now in your life. That you're looking back behind you to potentially there were better times then, right? I'm going to talk about that as well. And what we need to do is also start to then move forward, but not too far forward where you start to become anxious of the future. Again, when we fear the future, we become anxious. And that's why, although they're two very different emotions, depression and anxiety, because depression is basically, you're just low, right? You're apathetic. And again, I haven't been there once. I've been there many times, okay? I'm happy to say I'm no longer in that place. Did I get out of that overnight? No, but I did a lot of what I'm going to share with you today. Now, the anxiety, that came after, for me, the lower mood, right? The anxiety was, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. I don't know where I'm going. I'm not getting well. I'm relapsing. I don't know if this is going to be my future. I'm in my early 20s and I'm just getting pneumonia. I'm supposed to be healthy. I'm supposed to be a role model and I'm just sick. I'm just not doing well. So that fear of the future is where we have anxiety. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling irritable, any of those things, you're most likely worrying about where you're at in life, right? Where your future is. And depression is, you're not even in the future. You're living in the past. And again, I don't say that in any condescending way because I've done a lot of study in the field of psychology and work with a lot of people to understand that not for everyone, again, this is not for everyone, but a lot of the people, that's where they're failing. Well, what is the answer? Well, the answer, as they always say, is to be as present as you can in this moment in time. Because the past is the past and the future hasn't come yet. We are creating our future. We are creating our life with every thought that we think. Now, again, easier said than done, right? Easier said than done to create those new thoughts. But we're going to start to create these different patterns. The other big thing is this, is that it's really important to understand that in the grand scheme of things, life is very short. It honestly is. If you just think back 10 years, think about how quickly time has most likely moved by. And that's also why it's also can be a positive thing, meaning that you've most likely gone through struggles in your past before, but you've come out of those. And that's why I truly believe you'll come out of this one as well. And before we start to get into what to do, there's one more thing that we need to look at. And again, people very, very close to me, and I hate to see them struggle, but they're losing sight of this, is that there are certain phases to life, okay? A lot of times we go through these phases as a child, and we either have a good childhood or we have a bad childhood, and we get into high school, and we just love our high school experience, but then when we get to college, we don't fit in. Or college was an amazing time. We met amazing people, and those were basically the best times of our life. And then we become a young professional maybe, and we kind of regret leaving that either the home, or we regret leaving our tight relationships and having to become an adult now, right? Or as a young professional, you're free. You're able to work all day and go out at night and not have to answer to anyone really, right? And like that single life, or just maybe you're with a partner and you don't have any kids yet, and you're like, okay, this is freedom. And then you start a family and you have young children, and your relationship with your spouse might start to change because, again, you're parents now. Like, that's normal. But if you look back into it and say like, oh, well, it wasn't what it was like when we were dating, or it wasn't what it was like when I was in college, or it wasn't what I was like growing up or in high school. Well, yes, but that's because you're in a different phase right now, right? And then those people that have children, or the children have now moved out of the house and they feel lonely. Their children have moved on. They feel like those children have left them. These are all phases of life. And now the beautiful thing is that I get to work with thousands of people. And so I've just been able to experience and hear their stories over the years. And I see trends. I look for trends. That's what I do. I say, okay, in the majority of people, not everyone, but in the majority of people, 9 out of 10 people, this is exactly what's going on. They're in a lower mood. They're depressed because they're trying to live or relive a life that's already by. And again, this is not supposed to be negative. And here's why. We have to move through these phases in life. So if you have children right now and you're lamenting, or you're looking back on your single life, or how much freedom you felt you had, well, you've now entered into a different phase. And that phase is one of the greatest phases of you being able to now take care of your children. And the same exact thing, if your children have left the house, well, now you get to work, you get to actually like interact with your children now on an adult-based level. Have deeper conversations, deeper meetings, maybe things that you couldn't speak about them before. And maybe one day you become a grandparent, and then you get to now almost start that cycle again, if you choose to. Again, a lot of this is choice. That's what we're going to talk about next. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that as we're listening to this podcast, we're not stuck, that we're not stuck in a previous spot in our life, and we're trying to get back to that. Because remember, by trying to get back there, we're actually trying to shrink back. We're not in a growth phase. You have to understand, if you've moved to a different phase in your life, it's scary at first. It's overwhelming. Like maybe you switch jobs, okay? And that new job, maybe it comes with more money, and it comes with also, though, more responsibility. Well, at first you're like, this is just too much. I'm not used to either getting this type of paycheck. What do I do with it? Do I spend it? Do I save it? Do I buy a bigger house? Like all these different things, right? And the responsibility, I can't handle this. I've never done this before. It's more hours. It's more time. It's more responsibility. I'm now looking after other people on the team, whatever it might be, okay? But here's the thing. At each phase in your life, you've had to grow. When you go into high school, when you move into college, when you start dating, when you get your first job, your second job, when you start a family, when your children move off to college, when you have grandchildren, all of these things, they're phases. And at first, they're always difficult. Why? Because they're new. We have no experience with them. So that can make us anxious. Am I doing a good job? Yes or no? You're always contrasting and comparing. And that leads to a lot of overwhelm. So you have to look back. I always look back and say, okay, I survived childhood, for better or for worse, right? I survived high school. I survived college. I survived my first job. I then went back to school. I survived that. I went overseas and studied. I survived that. I found my wife. I survived that, right? Like all of these things. I have children. And like I always look back, and if I myself am personally experiencing anything difficult, I mean, and then again, like I had a lot of changes in 2017. I really changed my practice. I moved a lot more online. I hired a bigger team. Really, the last 3 to 4 months has been really challenging in my work. And the reason it is that we're growing at such a rapid pace, a pace that I've never grown at before. This is new to me, okay? This is new. We've never reached so many people this fast before. So what am I doing? Well, again, like this doesn't have to be your way out of it, but I'm looking back and I'm saying, okay, I've experienced difficult things before. I'd never opened a studio before, and I did that when I was in my mid-20s. And then I had never opened a functional medicine practice before, and then I did that when I was in my early 30s or so. So, like when I look at all of these things, I say, I've done it before. I don't know how to get out of this. I don't know what to do, but I'm going to be confident that I can do this as well, that I'm going to make mistakes, that I'm going to be a little gentler on myself, which I'm not, right? By nature, I am not gentle on myself. I'm a perfectionist. I'm hard on myself. I'm all of these different things. But I'm also going to not look at myself as a victim, that I'm going to understand that this is my life and that I'm in a certain phase of my life, that this phase is another growth phase. Like for me personally, I am now having to build out a larger team. I'm having to build out of customer service, like all of these specific things. Again, like you might say like, oh, well, great problems to have. And I agree, great problems to have. But where you're at right now, whatever you're struggling, they could also be great problems to have. They're not always all bad problems. Sometimes they seem bad and they seem overwhelming in the short term, meaning like right now. But in the long term, you're like, wow, without that happening, I would never have achieved X. So for example, hardest time in my life, 17 years old, all the way up to my early 20s. Hard times. Wasn't in a good mindset, certainly didn't have a good functioning body. Wasn't appreciative at the time, but because of the struggle, I'm where I am today. And because of that, I also have a great contrast. Meaning like there's not too many people out there as happy as I am. They're not, or as grateful as I am. And that's because I have a massive contrast. A massive contrast. I was as sick as you can really get, okay? As sick as you can get, and I was as poor mindset as you can get. Hot temper, bad mood, wasn't fun to be around, all of that, right? All of that. But now, life is good. And I have that contrast, right? So if I get the sniffles, if I feel a little tired, I say, yeah, sure, I have a cold or feeling run down. But nothing like it was 15 years ago or so, okay? So again, you can use that to contrast. The other thing you need to do is understand this, is that whatever you're experiencing right now, no matter how hard it is, no matter how difficult it is right now, it's only going to last a matter of days, weeks, or at most a matter of months. And the reason I say that is this, is that life never stops. It keeps moving whether you choose to keep up with it or not. So your experiences choose, because the people you surround yourself with are changing, evolving, your environment changes, your culture changes, all of those things change. So it will be your choice to keep up with it. Plus, I don't like the term time heals all wounds, because I don't like that. It doesn't, because they can stay with you unless you decide to do this next thing and choose not to be a victim, right? You have to choose that this is not going to be your life, right? You have to accept that it's your life right now. You can't kid yourself. This is your life right now, right? It's not the best. It's not great, but it is what it is right now. But other people right now are experiencing hard times. Doesn't necessarily make you feel better, but a lot of other people around you as well. And if they're not right now, well, they have in the past. And if they haven't, again, right now, then they might in the future as well. So what I need you to do is decide this, that this is your life. Right now is not going to be the best day, not the best time in your life, but it's going to get better. And here's why. Because you're resilient. You've already gone through hard times before in your life. So if you're 20 years old, 30 years old, 40, 50, 60 years listening to this, you're here today. And I know because you're here today that you've struggled deeply before in your past. You have. You have. Maybe not to this level, but that's because you've grown, right? So if you struggle the same way you struggled in the past, it's not that bad anymore because you've already experienced it. The only time we're struggling is really when we're repeating really difficult times, or we've met now our match, right? We're meeting something that is forcing us to grow, or it's forcing us to shrink back, right? It's starting to live back in the past. It's starting to be a little bit more depressed. But if we can push past that, if we can be resilient, which we know we are because we've dealt with things like this before, maybe not the same exact thing, but we've dealt with things just as bad. We have, because at the time, it seemed just as bad. It might not be as big today, but we have at the time experienced that level of difficulty. And then we have to decide, hey, it's bad, but I'm not a victim because I am the creator of my life. I don't want this. This is not what I want to have in my life. So because of that, I'm going to have to start to make some changes, okay? So if the job you're at right now is too much, if it's overwhelming, well, you need to do a few things. You need to start to deal with what you're currently at right now, but the hope of something better is what's going to get you through it, which means you're going to take 10 minutes during your lunch break to start to look at other jobs, right? You just keep your mind open. It could be anywhere in the world, right? You're just going to start to look at what else is out there. That's going to give you hope that you could transition or move jobs. I know a lot of people that have done this. They've either started their own job, become an entrepreneur, or they've taken another job. But it's the hope of finding something better that's going to move you into that next mindset. The next mindset is that there's something better waiting for you. Now that future is one of hope. That's what's going to keep you in that growth mindset, okay? So you're dealing with what you need to deal with now because you need to either make ends meet, you need to do what you need to do. I understand that, right? But there's hope that things are going to get better. Same for wellness. Same for weight loss. If you don't love your body right now. Same for relationships. Same for family dynamics. Same for all of those things. It's this, is that you may not enjoy your current lot in life, your current space, right? But you can change it, meaning like there is hope. So let's say right now you're in a really difficult time in your relationship and it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. Well, you need to ask yourself, what would it look like if it was great? Okay, write it down, journal. What would my relationship look like if it was great? How much time would I have to myself? How much time would I have with my partner? If you have a family, how much time would I have with my family? And you're going to start to work with your spouse, partner, family, children to just little by little to create that in your life. And again, you might say, well, they're not open to it. They don't think like we do, or they don't think like I do, whatever it might be. And I would say, I understand that. So what you're going to do though, is just keep the communication open. You're not going to assume that they're going to change their mind overnight. But what you're also going to do is you're going to say, hey, this is what it looks like to me to have an amazing relationship. What does it look like to you? Like, what is your top 10, right? What is your 10? As a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. What does your 10 look like for a relationship? Write those things down. Let's see if there's any overlap. I'm guaranteeing there is. Maybe you each need a little time to yourself, right? Maybe you're more of an introverted-based couple, right? Or maybe one person's a big extrovert, one person's an introvert. This person needs to go out more, okay? The extrovert. So you give them some of that, right? But then you get a little quiet time. Maybe you get a morning to yourself where everyone else goes out in your family, or you get to go take a walk. And the other person may not know that's of importance to you until you share it, of course, with them. And again, these are just some examples, right? These are some examples. And also, you have to understand that life's not perfect, right? We're not going to get this all the time. But what if we got a little bit more of it? Meaning you don't necessarily need this all the time, but most likely what you do is you need a little bit of it. You need a little bit of it so that you feel like you're in control of your life. So now ask yourself, how much of it do you need? Do you need 1 hour a day? Do you need 1 hour a day where you feel like you can get your workout in? You maybe prep your meals. You do a little reading. You do a little continuing education. Is that all you need? Meaning like if you got that, would you then feel better? At least to start for the next 12 weeks. And if the answer is yes, well, then you need to start using something like my morning routine. You're going to go to bed a little earlier. Again, you're going to have that discussion with your partner if that's what it's about. And you're going to wake up earlier so that you get that 1 hour to yourself. That problem is now solved. Or maybe you can take a lunch break and instead of going out with all your friends, maybe one day a week, you go out just by yourself. That's your workout. That's your good meal. That's your reading, whatever it might be. Or maybe your 1 hour is, hey, kids are in bed, spouse is watching TV. You take 1 hour to yourself. Maybe that's your 1 hour. But what you're going to do is you're going to start to look at it as, what do I really need, right? What do I really need? I can't just run away. I can't go to a deserted island. I can't do any of these things because the truth is that that's just escapism. That's you just running from your problems. What I want you to do is not to run. I actually want you to be a creator, okay? I don't want you to escape. I don't want you to think that you're a victim and you need to run away. And again, I know these are sensitive topics and I want to be sensitive in the way that I speak with you. But I want you to understand is that you have more control over your life than you know. You really do. Now, how do you get ultimate control? Ultimate control only comes with acceptance of where you're at now, also understanding that you are one person in your entire environment, which means that you need a little bit of time for yourself as a human, right? As a human, as a spouse, as a mother, as a father, as a grandparent, as whatever it might be, a member of your community. You're also going to have to give some of your time to others. And that's not a bad thing. Meaning like your service of others, whether you like it or not, is a good thing. But that should only be part of your life. So when I talk to people and they are low mood, they are depressed, I say, what's missing? What is it that's missing? That if you had that life would be good. Or what is it that you're holding on to right now? And I want you to think about this, okay? Rewind, think about it. What is it that you're holding on to right now in your past that you can't let go of in order for you to have a brighter future, to have a more fulfilled future? And if you're anxious right now, what do you fear in the future? What is it that you're worried about? Are you worried about not being able to find the person that you'd like to be with? Are you worried about your body, your self-image? Are you worried about not being able to get well? Are you worried about getting sick? That's a big thing in my practice. People are anxious because they're worried about their overall health, okay? What are you worried about? What do you fear? And again, this is going to be a hard exercise. But if you write it down, at least you have some clarity. And once you get clarity, you can work with a coach, you can work with a counselor, you can work with a therapist, or you can start to take action yourself. Maybe that's run a lab test. Maybe that's do a detox. Maybe that's just start to eat cleaner. Like it's anything, right? It might just be sitting down and chatting with a friend. Or it might be having that uncomfortable conversation with a loved one, whether it's a parent or a spouse or your children, whoever it might be, that, hey, this is what I'm going through right now. It's really important to me. I know that we may not see eye to eye on it, but I just want to express myself about how important this is to me. And that I don't expect things to change overnight, but if I could just get a little bit more of this, and I'm happy at the same time to give you a little bit more of what you need. If you can have that conversation, if you can work up to it, honestly, the other person may have been waiting for the same exact conversation, but they're too hesitant as a friend, a parent, a child, a spouse to have that conversation. At some point, somebody has to move into that creator, right? That creator role, not the victim, but the creator role, because a lot of us, we play the role of the victim. I played that for the first 25, 26 years of my life. I really did, right? It's kind of my upbringing. It's kind of like just where I came from. It wasn't just my parents. It's not that. My parents are great people, right? But it's the mentality that life happens to you, not for you, and that you don't have a lot of control over what happens in your life. You do. You do. You honestly do. And it doesn't mean that things change overnight, but it does mean this, is that once you start to be able to have those uncomfortable conversations, one word at a time, right? The first conversation may actually not go that well, but it's a door that now opens. That other person, eventually their wall will come down. It really will. It honestly will. And just you getting it off your chest, that is the first step. That's where you start to understand you took your first action step. You said, I am willing to begin to create the life that I want. That's all I need from you. Honestly, that's the very first step. I want to keep it at that for today. As always, I want to be sensitive around this topic, but I also want to be able to help in any way that I can. If I can help you, let me know. All right? Let me know at cabralsupportgroup.com. Let me know at stephencabral.com/ask Cabral. I want to do whatever I can that's within my power to help you. I really appreciate you listening to this show. And if this particular episode could help anyone, please do feel free to pass it along to them. Before you go, I wanted to share a personal story with you. The real reason I began to get well finally is because I figured out what was wrong with me. And that might seem pretty obvious, but I went from doctor to doctor for over 2 years before discovering at-home functional medicine lab testing. These are the labs that enabled me to finally figure out what was wrong with my hormones, blood sugar, electrolytes, and gut health. And once I knew what was wrong, I could then follow a proven plan in order to rebalance my body from the inside out. This is why I believe so strongly in functional medicine lab testing and why I've made it my mission to share these labs with the world. Now at equa.life, you can order an at-home lab test or lab bundle for you and your family and be able to complete it within the week. Plus, the EquaLife difference is that you're not left to try to read and figure out these labs on your own. We explain what your lab numbers mean, what they mean in the much bigger picture, and then how to go about rebalancing your body in order to heal. To see our full selection of lab tests or to set up a free lab selection call to find out what labs may be best for you, simply head on over to equa.life labs. And do remember, we ship these all over the world. To find out more and to set up your free lab selection call, simply head on over to equi.life/labs. That's EQUI.LIFE/labs.